Well, needless to say, one of the most absurd days in 49ers history, all part of what's been one of the more absurd years in 49ers history. The Jed York arrest and what it might mean moving forward, because even though the legal issues for Jed York might be in the rearview mirror, he's pleaded no contest to two charges. It seems like he still has a day of jail time left to be served, although it's hard to confirm if he has served both days. Even if all of that technically is in the rearview mirror for Jed York, this mugshot is going to remain a massive, massive problem for him and by extension, the 49ers for the indefinite future. And, even if the legal aspect of this is technically closed, there probably still is much more embarrassment to come. We could talk about police body cam footage, which is typically released in situations like this. We can talk about all of the downstream effects. According to Santa Clara County records, Jed York filed for divorce from his wife back in May, and who knows what else is going to come out moving forward. So buckle up. As Tim Kawakami wrote for us up on the San Francisco Standard, this could be the beginning of the end. And it's impossible to draw firm conclusions right now. That's why this is difficult to talk about in firm ways, because we don't know exactly which way this is going to break. But I wrote about it as well on the San Francisco Standard. NFL punishment might certainly be coming. And a lot of people are trying to compare this to the Robert Kraft incident at the massage parlor back in 2019. However, that incident did not end up with a no contest or a guilty plea from Robert Kraft. They dropped the charges against Robert Kraft. And I know that NFL discipline is not necessarily tied to what happens in the legal system. The NFL can operate its own process. But I can tell you that Roger Goodell certainly isn't happy that this is all dropped right before the 49ers. Jed York's 49ers are about to head to Australia as the NFL is trying to make an aggressive push to expand the game internationally. These are not headlines that the NFL wants. And again, regardless of NFL discipline or actual legal system discipline and punishment for Jed York, keep on going back to the mugshot and how jarring that is, and the realization that it's not just gonna go away and it's gonna become a meme. It already has become a meme that's gonna show up over and over and over again. And you talk about a void in leadership. You talk about legitimacy of leadership. I mean, this all undermines that. And it creates, at best, for the 49ers, a massive, massive distraction moving forward. And obviously, we don't know where this will all end. So we can talk about all that, but I just wanted to encapsulate everything that happened on this insane day, because the 49ers, the football side of things, they have made a signing. Viliami Fehoko, who is Vita Vea's second cousin, edge rusher, defensive end, initially drafted by the Dallas Cowboys in the fourth round, San Jose State product, East Palo Alto native, went to high school in Mountain View at St. Francis. He is now a member of the 49ers, and he's an intriguing prospect in that he actually has yet to take an NFL snap, so we don't actually know if this guy can be good or not. Drafted back in 2023, but an injury prevented him from seeing the field, and maybe he just needs an opportunity to show a little bit of something. And if there's a team that's in position to give edge rushers an opportunity right now, it is the 49ers with all of the injuries at that position. I would expect Fehoko to be in uniform for San Francisco on Thursday in Las Vegas for their preseason finale. I can give you guys an updated roster in just a second. I do also want to tell you that the 49ers, a day after trading for the veteran Deion Jones, have worked out two more linebackers. These are standard inside linebackers, Antonio Grier and Devin Harper. So obviously the 49ers are trying to just get through this preseason, this final game at the linebacker position. Nick Martin has the hamstring injury right now. Luke Gifford also with a hamstring injury. They don't want to play Fred Warner, probably don't want to play Dre Greenlaw either on Thursday. And even though Jaden Duggar is trying to get as many snaps as he can right now to knock off what is the typical issue with a really raw player, That's not enough to carry the weight of the entire linebacker room. So they traded for Deion Jones. We'll see if he can stick around with this team beyond just the final preseason game with his veteran knowledge of Raheem Morris's system. That probably can be TBD for the 49ers right now, but they are interested in adding even more at that position with Antonio Grier and Devin Harper coming in today. Then, of course, there is that edge rusher position where the 49ers are also trying to just get through this preseason. The question with Nick Bosa is a good one, and it's, one of the things we could talk about the craziness of this 49ers offseason. I'm going to go through some of that stuff in a bit, and I think it all ends up circling back to the injury rash, the insane injury rash that the 49ers suffered in 2025 that led to all the substation conspiracy theories and all this and all that. Well, that all goes back to Nick Bosa's week 3 ACL tear in 2025. Right now, I think we're uncertain about Nick Bosa's status here in 2026. We know that the 49ers, after the third Bosa ACL tear, sat him down a couple of weeks ago because of knee tendonitis, which is something that is wont to pop up, especially after a third ACL tear. We know that they're trying to ramp him back up for week 1, but we also know that we haven't seen him at practice in a couple of weeks, even working off on the side. So the question is, when is Nick Bosa going to be back out at practice? Because at some point, if he doesn't practice, we start expecting him to not play in week 1 or not even take the trip to Australia. 49ers are a week and 2 days away from taking off to Australia. So tomorrow there's another practice. It will be very interesting to see if Nick Bosa is out there, or if at least catch a glimpse of Nick Bosa. Maybe we hear a little bit more from Kyle Shanahan either tomorrow or on Thursday in Las Vegas. But let's now go to the craziness of the 49ers past year. Let's put all this in context. This is all from the San Francisco Standard headlines. I mean, we could rewind all the way back to the night after the Super Bowl when it comes to some of the off-field headlines. Keon White, the 49ers defensive end, shot after a dispute involving the rapper Lil Baby at a stripper party in San Francisco. Keon White had to undergo surgery. He now is okay. He now is back at 49ers practice. That was just the start of what has been a wild offseason for off-field events. Later on, a few months later on, facing arrest, Brandon Ayuk, still technically part of the 49ers, taunts Bay Area authorities. He says, "Come catch me," to Bay Area police after a warrant is issued for his arrest following a misdemeanor exhibition of speed charge. He drove over 100 miles an hour and videotaped himself doing it and posted himself doing it by Levi Stadium. This all obviously combined with Brandon Ayuk going on a social media posting spree, attacking Kyle Shanahan, attacking John Lynch, and attacking the 49ers organization. Next off-field story, Kyle Shanahan crossed the dividing line in his Tesla on Alma Street in downtown Palo Alto on July 14th and crashed into another car. Thankfully, the passenger or the driver of the car that he crashed into was completely unhurt, but Shanahan himself suffered multiple fractures, a concussion, and he had a laceration on his face that I saw the picture. Shanahan showed me the picture in his own office that was so bad that he had to undergo plastic surgery at Stanford Hospital. Shanahan in his office, that was a few weeks ago at this point, did take blame for that crash. He said, "I took my eyes off the road looking for his phone." No foul play involved there. It was a garden variety accident. Those do happen, but very, very nearly tragic. And Kyle Shanahan was lucky to be able to get out of there with injuries that he has since recovered from. But obviously, another black eye on the 49ers offseason. And of course, the news that dropped today, Jed York arrested in Ohio on suspicion of engaging in prostitution. He later pleaded no contest to amended misdemeanor charges that no longer featured the word prostitution in them, disorderly conduct, and possessing criminal tools. Still to be determined exactly what criminal tools means, although there's been speculation online that a phone can be a criminal tool in such an event if it was indeed used for the sting, or used as part of the sting that police were waiting for in the mobile home park in Ohio. $140, according to the Post, I think was the publication that initially released the information that Jed York had agreed to pay. So that's all according to the media reports. The details that we have right now, obviously lurid, obviously reflect very, very poorly on Jed York, and it adds a final piece to, I guess we're still technically in the offseason, right? We're in the preseason, so, but not in the regular season yet, but it adds a final piece to what has been just a wild, wild offseason for the 49ers. Of course, we cannot forget the backdrop of everything that the 49ers have had to deal with is the substation rumors. At best, that is an annoyance for the 49ers, right? Despite any scientific claim that it's a bunch of hogwash, it still has been a thorn in the 49ers side. It still has been a distraction for San Francisco as they prepare for this 2026 season. So you just say, boy, what's next for San Francisco? And I think it's a very fair question in the Jed York incident, and I wrote about this up on the San Francisco Standard, and we'll put this link up in the description, how the NFL can punish Jed York after the owner's arrest. I think that 49ers fans, especially those of you who have been aboard with this team for a longer time, back to the dynastic years, remember Eddie DeBartolo Jr., who happens to be Jed York's uncle. And I write about this in the piece. Perhaps the most infamous precedent of the NFL disciplining an owner involves York's uncle, Eddie DeBartolo Jr. He owned the 49ers from 1997 to 2000 and was suspended for the 1999 season. The NFL also fined DeBartolo $1 million after he pleaded guilty to one felony charge of failing to report an alleged extortion attempt by then Louisiana Governor Edwin Edwards. The incident was tied to DeBartolo's bid for a riverboat gambling license. So DeBartolo, York's uncle, pled guilty to a felony. The NFL punished him by suspending him for an entire season and fining him $1 million. By the way, $1 million in 1999 was more than $1 million in 2026. So obviously severe punishment for Eddie DeBartolo, who ended up stepping away from the 49ers. He gave the team to his sister, Denise York, and she ended up giving CEO powers to Jed York in 2008. And Jed York in 2024 became the principal owner of the 49ers. Just that background, though, with Eddie DeBartolo Jr. has fans rightfully thinking, what's next for the 49ers and Jed York? If Eddie D stepped away from the football team after his legal entanglements back in the late 1990s, what might happen with Jed York following his legal entanglement here in 2026? Again, this mugshot is not going away, and it is a major threat to Jed York's legitimacy as the leader of this 49ers franchise. He obviously has taken a step back in terms of day-to-day visibility ever since the disastrous end of the Jim Harbaugh era. Well, I guess not since then, since a couple years after that. You can go back to 2017. In fact, we could even play the video from the press conference on January 2nd, 2017 from Jed York. This was before the 49ers hired Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch later that month.
I'm going to say is going to be satisfactory. And again, we're going to be judged on what we do and what we accomplish. We haven't accomplished enough. I own this football team. You don't dismiss owners. I'm sorry that that's the facts and that's the case, but that's the fact. And I'm going to do everything that I can to get this right. This isn't about a business and running an operation to make money.
Ever since then, the 49ers have actually seen considerable on-field success. It took a couple years, right? They hired Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, but Jed York decided to step away. There were so much evidence of meddling in the Jim Harbaugh era, and obviously Harbaugh ended up leaving the 49ers after the 2014 season, and it seemed that Jed York was still too involved in 2015 with Jim Tomsula as the head coach and 2016 with Chip Kelly as the head coach. It seemed that he finally got things right in 2017 by also canning Trent Baalke, the general manager who had stayed aboard, and making sure that the general manager and the coach, John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, came in as part of the same hiring cycle in 2017. Combine that with the fact that Jed stepped back and let Kyle and John run the show, I think that was great for the 49ers. 2019 was their first Super Bowl appearance with that duo in charge. 2023 was their second Super Bowl appearance with that duo in charge. It unquestionably has been a successful head coach GM combination that has proven to have more longevity than the head coach GM combination of Jim Harbaugh and Trent Baalke much earlier in Jed York's tenure. But the 49ers have very frustratingly not yet won a Super Bowl. They've come very painfully close a couple of times in 2019 and 2023. And now comes this off-field, away from the team facility scandal that Jed York is going to have a very, very difficult time putting in the rearview mirror. I hate to speak declaratively about the future because it's too early to tell exactly what's going to happen next. A lot of people are going to make overarching predictions and they're going to state them as fact. We don't know. We really don't know what's going to happen next in terms of NFL discipline and in terms of public perception. But we can say that the opening of this has been ugly, and there's a chance that it gets even uglier moving forward. And that's going to lead to speculation in a lot of different directions. But yes, the NFL can further discipline Jed York moving forward. And no, this situation does not necessarily have to follow the path of the Robert Kraft situation. The massage parlor incident in Florida with the owner of the New England Patriots in 2019. There's one big fundamental difference already, and it's that Jed York has actually pleaded no contest. So he's been convicted of 2 misdemeanors, whereas Robert Kraft was not convicted of anything back in 2020 following the 2019 incident at the Orchids of Asia massage parlor in Jupiter, Florida. So even if it was a legal technicality that allowed Robert Kraft to get off back then, the legal technicality allowed Robert Kraft to escape from any legal ramifications. In the case of Jed York, obviously he did not escape from legal ramifications. And now we will see the NFL's justice, or I guess punishment apparatus, technically does operate independent of the legal system, but it, I'm sure, is influenced by the legal system, and there is more standing here for punishment to be levied. I can answer some of the questions here, Mike, if you have any questions. And Mike said that the divorce with Jed had filed divorce from his wife back in May. That adds a whole other layer to this. I don't want to turn this into the tabloid show. We're trying to speak only facts right now. That's what we know, that he filed for divorce back in May. We know that he was arrested yesterday in East Palestine, Ohio. We know that prostitution, soliciting prostitution, was part of the arrest for Jed York, and we know that that charge was later amended and, in effect, downgraded to, I forgot what exactly the language was. Let me take a quick look at it. Amended charge of disorderly conduct, a misdemeanor disorderly conduct, and possessing criminal tools. It's unclear at this point what exactly criminal tools are, although there has been speculation that a phone can count as a criminal tool. That's what we know. We've seen the mugshot. I don't think I need to put it up again. You could rewind if you need to see it again. We also know the context of all of this. Eddie DeBartolo Jr. suspended for a year, fined $1 million. That's Jed's uncle back in 1999. He gave up control of the team after that incident. We know of a couple of other situations where owners have been suspended and or fined. One of those was in Miami, where Stephen Ross, that was the tampering scandal with Tom Brady and Sean Payton. Stephen Ross was suspended for a couple months. There was a fine involved there as well. And the Miami Dolphins had to give up a couple of draft picks, a first-round pick and a third-round pick. Of course, there's the incident of Dan Snyder in Washington. That got a lot more complicated. I think Congress got involved in that one. And there was a lot of pressure on Dan Snyder to sell the football team. And eventually he did. He sold it to the Harris Group for over $6 billion. It is unclear if he would have been forced to sell. There is a bylaw that the NFL has that if 24 of 32 owners vote that another owner has to sell, well, that owner is forced to sell. So there is a way within the NFL mechanism to force an owner out. I'm not saying that this Jed York situation comes anything close to that at this point. The future still remains to be unwritten. More can still come out, but it is worth noting that the pressure from the outside did appear to make Daniel Snyder sell that football team for over $6 billion in Washington to the Harris Group. So if you want to read more about what might be next for Jed York and the 49ers from an NFL punishment standpoint, I would highly recommend that you check out the article up on the San Francisco Standard. It is right here. I am copying the link and I am sending it to Mike to toss into the description. And I am now going to toss it into the comments section as well. If we have any good questions, I'll put them up there and I'll answer them. I know that the comment section is probably going to be a war zone today, so I'll venture in there with my hazmat suit. I'll be very careful as I venture into the comment section, but this is a football-related comment. This is good right here. I like the edge move with Viliami Fehoko, but has Joey Bosa retired? You think we need to raise the floor at defensive end? And thank you for not doing all the stupid gambling stuff. I appreciate that. We're not going to do the gambling stuff. We're here to be honest about everything, and we don't want to take money from businesses that we do not believe in. So I appreciate that you've noticed that. But Joey Bosa is not formally retired. There's a chance that he has retired unless he gets an enormous amount of money. It's unclear how much money he would want. John Lynch has previously indicated that Joey's asking price is too much for the 49ers. I have speculated that Joey Bosa might be on the Eric Kendricks track. Remember that last season, Eric Kendricks, the veteran linebacker, remained unsigned all the way through, late November, early December, joined the 49ers and ended up being a key player for them down the stretch. Sometimes these veterans who know that they're at the end of their careers, they don't want to do training camp. They don't want to do 15 or 16 weeks of the regular season. They just want to bide their time and sign with the team for the last couple weeks of the season and then get to experience December football and playoff football. And I don't blame them because the season is really, really long. Could it be that Joey Bosa is in the same school of thought? And if he is, then he might not be willing to sign with anybody, including the 49ers, at this period of time. He might be waiting a little bit longer so that way he can make his last football some really meaningful football. But a very good question. Thank you. Somebody says, my entire Twitter feed is full of Jed York jokes, even the political tweeters. He may have to lay low on social media until this blows over. I think this is a great point. This feeds right into what Tim Kawakami was writing. This feeds right into what I've been saying. That mugshot is not going away. The details of this incident that have come out so far, 9:30 a.m., the time, right? 9:30 a.m., not 9:30 p.m., 9:30 a.m., the time, the money, $140, the mobile home community in fairly rural Ohio. I looked up the location. That all of that combined just paints this sordid picture. It's just not good, right? And it is ripe for the internet to just go to town. And that is a massive, massive problem for Jed York. It's a much bigger problem than 2 days in jail. It's a much bigger problem than a $1,150 fine for him. It is the fallout that is, Tim wrote that he thinks it's going to be associated with this chapter of 49ers ownership forever. Do you think it's going to go away? If you think it's going to go away, you could comment that you think it's going to go away at some point, blow over, as you say. But if you think it's not ever going to fully blow over and this is going to compromise the 49ers from a leadership standpoint, legitimacy-wise at the top, well, then San Francisco and Jed York, they have got much, much bigger problems. Now we could talk about the 49ers offensive line. Aside from trying to convince a retired offensive lineman to unretire, are there any realistic trade targets the 49ers could target to address at left guard? You're talking about Joel Bitonio, whom I think the 49ers probably didn't want to retire in the first place because he could have fit in well at left guard. I think not a trade target, but Kevin Zeitler, a free agent who has played good football in his career, was starting as soon as recently as last year, is still available. I would think there are always trade targets for the 49ers. I don't know who teams are willing to part with at this time. They traded for Laken Tomlinson in 2017, and he was in that starting lineup by week 2. So you wonder how confident the 49ers are with Carver Willis running out there week 1. If they're not confident with Willis out there and they don't think that Robert Jones will be back from his calf injury by that time, and they don't think that Connor Colby's the answer, although Colby has started games. They didn't go well for Connor Colby. But if they're not confident in any of that, and I think Austin Pleasance was maybe a fail-safe option for the 49ers until he hurt his knee, they're going to have to go outside the building. That's a very important position, and they play the Rams in week 1, and the Rams, Myles Garrett will line up anywhere, but even if he's lining up over the edge, that means that Trent Williams has to focus on Myles Garrett, and he can't help out Connor Colby or whoever's starting Carver Willis to the right of it at that left guard position. So it is a position to keep an eye out for. Unfortunately for the 49ers, Joel Bitonio did retire. All right. Let's see. Any good questions? I will be very, very willing to answer them. What happened to Robert Kraft when he was caught in a related situation? Nothing ended up happening to Robert Kraft because they dropped the charges. That was a situation where there was a legal fight over the validity of evidence. Police had installed cameras and it was ruled unconstitutional, the installment of cameras at that massage parlor. So by extension, Kraft saw the charges dropped against him, and then the NFL said, well, no charges against him. We won't further push this. The NFL could have pushed it further, but Robert Kraft, of course, had very, very strong stature within the NFL. I would argue stronger stature than Jed York has within the NFL. Now, York is fundamentally, I think, in a more compromised position right now with the NFL than Robert Kraft because York has actually pleaded no contest. So he's been convicted of 2 misdemeanor charges. So even though the charge was downgraded and prostitution's not part of the charge, it's only disorderly conduct, there still are 2 no contest pleas here. There were no contest pleas, and there was no mugshot. Perhaps more importantly, there was no mugshot in the case of Robert Kraft back in 2019. Robert says, I haven't seen anyone talk about Jed's divorce this May. That's because it wasn't public knowledge, and I don't think it should be public knowledge until something like today happens, until there's actual criminal activity. That's a private matter between Jed and his wife. That surfaced because people started digging into those divorce records today, understandably so, following the arrest of Jed York in Ohio. So I'm sure you're going to hear people talk a lot more about that moving forward. All right, back to football here. Am I the only one who thinks Garrett Wallow is having a good camp? I think he's going to make this team. Enjoy the content. God bless. Thank you, sir. VO23. I think the 49ers agree with you that Garrett Wallow is having a good camp. And I think that he impressed them last year, especially with his performance in the playoffs with 11 tackles against the Philadelphia Eagles. I think that Brant Boyer, the 49ers special teams coordinator, really likes Garrett Wallow. And if they want to bubble wrap him on Thursday because he's going to make this team, it makes even more sense why they're trying to stockpile some new linebackers right now. The trade for Deion Jones and the 2 tryouts for San Francisco today. So it seems that he's ahead of Tatum Bethune on the pecking order. Well, it remains to be seen how Raheem Morris evaluates these things, and maybe he's just trying not to show his cards ahead of the cut down on Sunday, but I think that you might be on to something. Do you think it's worth it for Jed to do a press conference on this issue before the season starts? Or would the NFL owners need him to do it? Well, what's really, really interesting here is that I think the stakes are higher for the NFL than they typically would be because the 49ers are headed to Australia. And the NFL's really, really gung-ho on the expansion into overseas markets. This is a big deal for the NFL, the first ever regular season game in Australia. So Jed York, the owner of one of the 2 teams selected to participate down there, obviously was counted on to be one of the faces of the event in Australia. I don't even know if he goes to Australia now. I have no idea how this is going to develop. But maybe the NFL will put some pressure on York if he doesn't want to go to Australia to confront this head on publicly before the 49ers leave. Again, no clue, all speculation, but I know that Roger Goodell could not have been happy about this morning. I mean, he never would be happy about this happening to one of his owners, but I think that he's probably doubly, triply, or even quadruply unhappy about it, given the fact that the 49ers are just over a week away from taking off to Australia. As Sean says, this is a bad look before the 49ers go overseas internationally. Somebody's surprised that Brandon Ayuk has yet to comment on this. He did comment after Kyle Shanahan's accident, or maybe after we were in Kyle Shanahan's office and he admitted culpability for the accident. Somebody's saying, here's hoping for all of this to blow over. I mean, at some point, something else is going to enter the news cycle. I get it. But again, I can't emphasize this enough. That mugshot is going to be a meme that comes back up every single time that Jed York talks. That's the problem. You know, one of these, the 49ers have run into an issue that keeps on reigniting itself with the substation as well. Obviously not as serious of an issue, but it's still a viral online meme in that every single time somebody gets hurt, the substation pops up online. And so, yeah, is that probably just an annoyance for the 49ers? Sure. You can argue that it's just an annoyance for the 49ers, but it's still a perception issue. And it's still something that gets new life every single time something comes up. This Jed York incident, obviously much more serious than a conspiracy theory about a substation. But this Jed York incident has the mugshot that is going to continually pop back up every single time he speaks or makes a public appearance. That's why his public legitimacy as the leader of the 49ers in this ownership role has been severely compromised. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. Somebody says maybe Jed will let Eddie D run things again. Eddie D might be happy in retirement up in Montana, up in Whitefish. I don't know. I can't speak for Eddie D at this point, but it's been a quarter century since he gave up control of the team in 2000. So, I mean, I think that is probably not a very realistic thought at this time. And again, we don't know. The fog is creeping in behind me here in San Francisco. There's a lot of fog looking forward into the future to see exactly how this will develop. At, some level of it will blow over, like undoubtedly, just because the attention span of the internet and by extension society, because it's so plugged into the internet, is so much shorter than it used to be. So I get it. At some level, the next scandal, the next story will grab hold. I get that. But again, as much as things are set up to just move on to the next thing these days, they're also set up to re-spark these days because of meme culture, right? Because once that mugshot is out there, that mugshot can keep on popping up indefinitely. So it is a double-edged sword these days, and I think you need to be ready for anything to develop moving forward. Somebody asking, how much could the Yorks sell the 49ers for? Isaac asks, well, didn't the Seahawks just sell for, what was it? Was it $10 billion? To one of the minority owners of the 49ers, or ex-minority owners of the 49ers, Vinod Khosla, who had purchased a few percentage points of the team from Jed York about a year or two ago. Wasn't that all that long ago? So the valuation of the 49ers is definitely going to be higher than that of the Seattle Seahawks. It's a glamour franchise, 5 Super Bowls. More than anything, the 49ers, they're in a bigger market than Seattle. They're in a top 5 media market in the San Francisco Bay Area. Combine that with the franchise history. Combine that with the fact that the prices of these franchises only increase, though we haven't seen a decrease in a really, really long time. Well, there could be a massive, massive sale if that ever did come to fruition. No, it's not going to be $30 billion. Think about an incremental increase over the 10 billion or so. The last time that the 49ers sold a portion of this team, this is how you make a valuation, by the way. If you sell about 10% of the team, then you can multiply however much you sold the 10% by 10 to say that the team is valued at, I think for the 49ers, it was a little bit over $8 billion. So I think that they sold the 10% at an 8-point-something billion dollar valuation. But I think that the Seahawks, I forgot the exact amount, was something close to 10 billion now. And that means that the 49ers would also be over 10 billion at this point. Nicole asking, would Eric Kendricks fit the 49ers linebacker need? I don't think the 49ers fit what Eric Kendricks would be looking for, since he already went the path of signing with a team, the 49ers, late last season. I would think that Eric Kendricks follows the same path again here in 2026, if he does still want to play. And I think he's training right now, but I don't think he wants to play a full season. So the 49ers, Eric Kendricks is just not an option for the 49ers at this point if he is in the same mindset as he was last year. Maybe check back in 2 or 3 months. Will I be coming down to cover the game in Arlington, Texas? Of course. I'm looking forward to that in Arlington at Jerry World in Arlington, Texas, outside of Dallas. Yes, that might be a majority 49ers crowd as well. Last time they were there, they took over the stadium, right? Well, maybe yes, the playoff game in the 2021 season, a lot of 49ers fans, even more when they played there. I believe it was in the final year of Jim Harbaugh in 2014. They won the season opener in Dallas that year. Somebody's saying, sorry, you've got to cover this nonsense, man. That's why I'm trying to mix in football coverage here. That's why I'm trying to talk here. We could even put the 49ers 53-man roster on the screen. I'm trying to make this as substantive as possible, but obviously I've got to cover the news involving the arrest of the 49ers owner. But at the same time, I know you guys care about football, and I know that the season's right around the corner. I know there have been an insane amount of distractions over the course of this offseason. But at the end of the day, you guys tune in for pure, unfiltered football coverage, and that's what I'm trying to give you when I give you the 90-man depth chart. In less than a week, this is going to be cut down to 53 men, and the 49ers are going to re-sign 17 players to their practice squad. So this is going to look different, and I'm trying to project it as well as I can right now. But I'm having a really difficult time at some positions like linebacker. I don't know who the 5 or 6 linebackers whom they're going to take are going to be. I don't exactly know how they're going to deal with the offensive line position. I've got all the guys who I think they're going to keep around, either on injured lists or on the 53-man roster without cutting. I've got those guys on the left side of the dividing line, but I'm not firmly confident in that projection because I think the 49ers are going to have to undergo many, many maneuvers to make this fit under 53. That includes keeping guys who are currently on PUP, and there are only 2 of those right now on PUP for the time being. That's Michael Williams and Isaac Guerendo. One of my predictions is that Guerendo, even if he's healthy, stays on PUP so he doesn't count as a roster spot, misses the first 4 weeks. I think the 49ers will release some healthy vested veterans just to re-sign them on the next day so that they can clear that 53-man roster cut down with players on the roster so they can put them on injured reserve so they're eligible to return after 4 weeks. So I think the 49ers will run those maneuvers. I think they'll use both of their return from IR designations. They could use 2 of those at the cut down. It's all a challenge of fitting as many players onto the roster so that you don't have to expose unwanted players to waivers, but you only have 53 spots plus whatever other spots you create. And you can use your existing PUP spots, and you can use your return from IR designations, and you can use the creative release and re-sign maneuvers to do that. How exactly the 49ers will fill out this entire roster at the very margins remains to be seen, and probably still is some stuff that's going to happen this week in terms of injuries and performance on the field on Thursday that can influence San Francisco's decision. So I live and breathe the football part of it, and I vow to bring you as in-depth of coverage as possible when it comes to this roster over the course of the over the course of the next few days. Somebody's saying Stribling lock up wide receiver 3. Wide receiver 3, the guy is clearly the 49ers' second best receiver right now that's available for San Francisco. Now, whether he plays the F or the Z or the X or all of the positions, that remains to be seen. But if you're talking about the 2 best receivers on this team, Mike Evans and Dejon Stribling, those are the 2 guys who the 49ers are protecting from special teams duty. Team in the second period of practice works on special teams, and Mike Evans and Dejon Stribling don't practice special teams, so they don't get hurt. They do their own individual drills. That is veteran star receiver treatment that the 49ers have already been giving Dejon Stribling. The Bengals also just released a veteran guard today, a starter, Cody Ford. I don't know if the 49ers kicked the tires on that. I don't know exactly what Chris Furster would be looking for in that regard, but it is worth noting that the Bengals did release Cody Ford in case the 49ers are looking to bring in some, I don't want to say starting caliber help because you don't know what type of player he is now, but as of recently, Cody Ford was a starter for Cincinnati. $714 Caleb says the Niners were building on a solid preseason. Then this mess pops up. Guys, they're still building on a solid preseason. The football operation of the 49ers, sure, might this be a distraction? Yes. But Kyle Shanahan has recovered from the symptoms of his concussion following the accident. John Lynch is still at the helm. The 49ers have still been healing as a football team. We saw Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle return to practice yesterday. I can guarantee you that Kyle Shanahan is still going to have this team prepared to play. From an organizational standpoint, of course, this is not good news for the 49ers, but it's not necessarily the entire ship goes down because this happens to the owner. I even believe, didn't the New England Patriots win the Super Bowl the year after Robert Kraft? I'm not, maybe not, or soon after. They might have. I don't remember firmly if it was before or after that, but the point still remains the same. The football operation, to Jed York's credit, has been largely untouched by Jed York ever since he hired Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. So they're going to keep on doing their thing. It has been wild how many pieces of drama have surrounded the 49ers, especially off the field, over the course of the past few months. That much is indisputable. But when you look at it from a football-only standpoint, I think that the 49ers still have a very good team, and a lot of things have been trending in their direction in that regard. The Kraft charges were the week before the Pats beat the Rams in the Super Bowl. That literally popped up the week before. Now I remember that well. That was before the Jared Goff, Sean McVay Rams. Was that game played in New Orleans? I still remember maybe it was Atlanta that year. I still remember the Rams, though, not being able to figure out that New England Patriots defense. Wesley says, Jed should hit the red button and trade for Max Crosby, and all this news on him will go away. That's one thing that Mike has theorized, and this is a good closing note for me. He said, well, maybe the 49ers will go out of character and Jed will say, hey, let's make it go for broke move right now. Let's have this go away. Let's make a max. That would be peak insanity, right? The 49ers just decide to send draft capital that they otherwise wouldn't have sent to make some kind of massive splash right now because they're too impatient to wait for the trade deadline and for prices to come down. And then everybody starts talking about that. And then we can start working on the 30 for 30 documentary that's going to come out in 10 or 15 years. Because especially if this ends up in a Super Bowl for the 49ers, even if it doesn't, I mean, this past era of 49ers football has seen so many stories, one after the other, whether they be positive, negative, neutral. It's hard for a splashy story to be neutral, but so many stories. This is another one in a long list. So why don't we start making the documentary now? Because buckle up. I think this is only going to become more and more interesting moving forward. Everybody, thanks for watching. We'll talk to you soon.